guys, it's Vaughn back from Starbase Martinsburg, and since today is Tuesday, we're here for our hands-on experiment of the day. So I'm going to be demonstrating how you can actually go about creating a chemical that will change the color of various liquids. So the chemical that we're going to be using will come from this red cabbage of all things. So this would be one material you probably don't have lying around at home. You would have to get at the grocery store. It's going to cost you only about $2 though, so it's very inexpensive and it's going to provide a lot of fun for you guys. So we're going to be creating what's referred to as a pH indicator using that red cabbage and some distilled water later. Now you might be thinking, what is a cabbage indicator? So indicators in general are compounds that mixed with liquids will turn a certain color based on their acidity level. So if they're basic, if they're acidic, or if they are neutral. And this all relates back to what's referred to as the pH scale. So the cabbage here contains a special compound called anthocyanide, and that's a specific chemical that when mixed with other various liquids will turn your liquid a certain color. So what is pH? You might have seen before in textbooks or even in the classroom this scale here. It's called the pH scale. So pH actually stands for the power of hydrogen. Now, depending on if you have a neutral substance or if you have an acidic substance or a basic substance, it's going to then affect the hydrogen ions that are within that substance. So typically, acids will actually donate their hydrogen atoms, whereas bases will gain them. All right. Now we are going to head to the kitchen and create some of the cabbage indicator for you to experiment with at home. So let's go there. Okay, so I went ahead and put the 2 cups distilled water into my blender container. I did throw it into the microwave, that way it's warmed up a little bit before we begin. And you can see here I went ahead and cut my cabbage into like smaller sections, and there's about 2 cups of the red cabbage ready to add into my container here. Alright, so now that we have our cabbage and our water both in our container to blend, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and I'm going to let it mix together for about 1 minute, just until you see that all the cabbage leaves are completely mixed together well. And so I'm going to turn it on low to start with. Pause it here at about 30 seconds just to kind of check to see how things are going, and it looks like that probably is going to be sufficient. All right, so depending on your mixer, 30 seconds to a minute is what you need to blend everything together well. All right, so now that we have our cabbage mixture all blended and ready to go, we're going to be pouring it into our new container here. And as you can see, sitting on top of my container, I have a kitchen sieve. That is simply for the purpose of when we go to pour our mixture in, catching anything that wasn't thoroughly blended together the first go around. And at this point, I'm going to be honest with you, your kitchen is definitely going to start to smell like red cabbage. It's not the most pleasant smelling, but I feel confident that you can handle it. So like I said, we're going to be taking this and pouring it into our container over our sieve. And you're going to notice that as soon as I start pouring, little chunks are going to start to be collected there. Like I said, that's the purpose of that kitchen sieve. And then once everything is dumped into your cup, you should be ready to go. I'm going to let it sit just for a few seconds here to catch any. You can see it kind of draining off a little there still. But then after about 30 seconds, you should be good to go with your red cabbage indicator. Okay, so now that we have our cabbage indicator created, I just went ahead and put it into this pitcher. That way it's going to be a little easier to pour out into our containers. So as you can see in front of me, I have prepared our liquids that we're going to be testing. Now, you're not going to be limited to these liquids. These are just ones that I was able to quickly find in my kitchen or at the house. But with your parents' permission, you could go around the house kind of collecting really any types of liquids. And I'll give you some suggestions at the end of what you might want to use. But for today, what you see in front of me, over here we have lemon juice. And you can either squeeze the juice from a lemon, or you can can kind of cheat like I did. And in your grocery section, they actually have little lemons that are filled with juice. So that's what I did. This is just our lemon juice. This container here contains vinegar. It's distilled vinegar. You could also use apple cider vinegar, really whatever you have at home. This cup here is actually Sprite. All right. So really, again, any type of like clear soda could work. This is just what I had at home. Here we have just normal tap water. It's going to be the easiest probably to obtain. This cup here actually contains toothpaste and water. All right. So what I did was just put a couple squirts of toothpaste in, put some tap water, and then gave it a good stir to kind of fully integrate it into the mixture. Here we have baking soda and water. And again, I put about 2 tablespoons of baking soda and then poured some water and just gave it a good stir to kind of mix the solution in. This one, you'll want to make sure you ask mom or dad's permission. This is ammonia, and it's a cleaning supply, but it is very strong smelling, so please, before you work with these chemicals here on the end, make sure you get mom or dad's permission. And then lastly, we have some bleach. And again, just make sure we're getting supervision when using those chemicals, because they can be harmful. So now comes the fun part. We are going to take our Cabbage indicator, and I'm just going to pour a small amount in, and as soon as I start pouring, you're going to clearly see a color change. So here's our first one. You can see it turns a really pretty shade of like reddish pink, and I'm going to pour just a little bit more in there. All right, so that again was our lemon juice. Now let's go to our vinegar. I'm going to pour some in, and you can see as I'm pouring it in, it's still that purple color that we had in the kitchen there, but as soon as it went into my cup, here we have a little bit less vibrant of a red, but definitely still in that same spectrum. Now let's go to our Sprite. So the Sprite is a really pretty shade of like pinkish purple. Now let's try our tap water. And hopefully, as you would assume, the tap water saves just about the same color that you observed when we actually created our Cabbage indicator. So again, as we talked about earlier, your tap water is typically going to be a neutral. All right, now let's move on to our toothpaste. So I'm going to pour some in here. And you can see it's turning a really cool shade of like bluish, maybe with a hint of green. All right, now for our baking soda and water. So this one also looking pretty similar to our toothpaste, maybe just a little bit more of a greenish hue, kind of like a teal. Now let's move on to our ammonia. And I'm not going to get too close because it's really strong smelling, and it turns a really pretty green. Now my personal favorite is the bleach, just because it has a really cool color change. So I'm going to start to pour it in, and at first you're going to see green, but if we let it sit there, it's kind of, you can see one's more dense than the other. As I kind of stir it around, it's turning to a really cool shade of yellow. So again, as I pour it in, it's going to look really green, but as it fully integrates into the mixture, it turns a really neat shade of yellow. So as you can see here, we have this really pretty rainbow spectrum, and your acids are going to be down here. Those were the pH value from like 1 to 7. These are going to be more of your pinks and your purples. And then as we head this direction, we're getting to get more basic. All right, so this would be from like 7 to 14. Obviously, the darker we go with the greens, and then ultimately from the solutions we have, one that's most alkaline would be our bleach, and turning that really pretty yellow color. So like I said, we would love to see your videos of you guys testing chemicals you might have at home. Like I said, you can go to the fridge, try different types of like juices, try bottled water. That might be interesting to see if it's pretty close to our shade here. And actually, as you see, when I first started to pour the indicator into our water, it looked pretty purple, but now that it's set for a little bit, it's more on the alkaline side. You can see it's more like a bluish hue, so that's kind of interesting. It'd be cool to test like bottled water compared to like mineral water. So again, in the comments, we're going to leave some directions on how you guys can video what you create, or even if you just want to capture some photos and then share them with us. That way on Friday, you could be included in our little slideshow of all the cool hands-on experiments that virtual campers have conducted. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have fun with your red Cabbage indicator.